Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. We're about a minute and a half late, which always makes people a little bit nervous in our chat. You never know when someone might kick down the door over here. So far, so good. Thank God we've got Donald Trump in office. I actually mean that in a very serious way, because as I was reflecting with Owen Schroyer the other day and Alex Jones, I went over to the InfoWars studio and sat down with those. We were talking kind of off camera about what a difference it makes, because you don't actually have to worry about that. That being said, we've still got guys getting swatted. It is something that people are concerned about over there. And obviously, if it happens to you, you have to be aware that there's still real dangers in the world, because when the left is injured, it is still quite dangerous. It's a thing that can happen. So we just got to be grateful for the things that we have, the good things that are going on right now. I'm going to kind of give you a little taste of what we're going to get into today. We're going to be talking about the Supreme Court and a ruling on ghost guns. I think they got it wrong. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court is mediocre on guns. It continues to be. We're going to talk about constitutional carry, which is coming down and being pushed around in the House right now. Some debate going on about it. Of course, Tom Massey doing a really good job of articulating the issues and, in fact, championing guns in general. Second Amendment should be a pretty absolute right. You kind of have an absolute right pretty darn close to being able to say anything you want in this country. You also should be able to own firearms and make your own. That's my take on it. We're going to talk a little bit more, we can't help it, about the signal discussion, this whole signal gate op versus oops situation. We had a great conversation yesterday with George Hill coming in and giving his take on it. The more I listen, the more I look, the more I read about what we are seeing both overseas and domestically, it makes me believe overwhelmingly that this was not an accident, that they didn't do this, as some sort of misunderstanding, that someone screwed up. We're going to continue to be able to watch it, because if we do see a big personnel change, if someone like Mike Waltz ends up paying for it, that'll be that'll be something that we can hang our hat on and say, okay, yeah, they actually thought he screwed up, unless they were using it to, kind of squish him out. Either way, it just more depends to me on who is running the op. Is it being run inside by the Trump administration, or if someone else was doing it from the outside, or if there's some disloyal member of the cabinet staff? Always a possibility. I'm still leaning towards the media is getting played on this. That I can't see it any other way. I've been part of too many signal chats. So we'll do more of it, and there's no other way to do it, because the media is obsessed with it. It's on front page of every single piece. So we'll talk further about that. They tried to jam up Kash Patel with some questions about it. Pretty funny. We're going to talk about NPR. Maybe the silliest, most woke, goofy, state-funded media that exists in America. I used to listen to it with my father. We'd listen to All Things Considered. They used to make really great radio programming, and for some reason, now they're just propaganda. We're also going to talk about the propaganda of Voice of America, a couple other things on there. Tariffs are coming. They're inbound, and we're not talking about those a lot. 100 days of Donald Trump's second administration kind of coming due, and we're sort of looking at a retrospective there. So that's where we're going with today's show. There's a lot involved in that. As usual, I try to cram as much in there so I don't get bored. Hopefully that means that you don't get bored, and that's what we're going to do. As we're talking about Signal, and as we are talking about apps that are on your phone, you might be thinking about your cell phone service, so now's a good time as any to talk about it. Folks, you can check out Patriot Mobile if you want to support the program and support yourself. It's patriotmobile.com/KSS. Just because the election is won, there's still a massive fight to restore our great nation. That is obviously the case. We're only at the beginning here, so you can take a stand with Patriot Mobile. They are America's only conservative and Christian wireless provider. They offer you an opportunity to vote with your wallet. You can do so without compromising on quality or convenience. And they're not just about providing cell phone service everywhere. It's actually a call to action to defend your rights, including the Second Amendment. With Patriot Mobile, you're going to get outstanding nationwide coverage. They operate on all three of the major networks. And you'll also be able to say that if you have cell phone service today, you can get it with Patriot Mobile. Very easy to do. Their coverage is guaranteed. The difference is that every dollar you spend is going to support the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the sanctity of life, veterans, first responders, and other things we care about. And switching is quite easy. You can keep your number, you can keep your cell phone, you can upgrade either one or both or neither. Do what you need to. Use KSS to get a free month of service. They have 100% US-based tech support. So if you want to call them, it's 972-PATRIOT. Use that promo code KSS for a free month of service. It means you can get, 1/12 off the entire year's bill. Check them out. Switch to Patriot Mobile today. Defend freedom with every call and text that you make. Thanks so much to them. Let's get into it today on this Thursday, March the 27th. All right, so let's go start something where what do they say? The very beginning, I don't know. The very beginning is the Bill of Rights for me. It continues to be the most important thing that we do. Supreme Court is upholding rules requiring background checks for ghost guns. I'm not a big fan of this. I'm not a big fan of this at all, and I wish that the Trump administration was stronger on guns. I don't know that they ever will be. It would be the nicest way for us to see this go forward, because they do have unilateral control of the ATF and the rules that are put forward and whether or not they choose to enforce them. So even though the Supreme Court is going to continue on, and even though, this has already been decided that it was advancing, so the decision came from arguments not made by Donald Trump's administration. But it still bothers me that they don't really get it. I don't feel like 1990s Democrats understood guns. Those are the same people that passed the assault weapons ban, which was kind of silly. And Donald Trump's a New Yorker. So let's just call things as we see them. Again, I don't have to co-sign on every single thing that the guy does, because I'm not a cheerleader. That's not my goal here. Supreme Court on Wednesday, that was yesterday, upheld a Biden-era federal regulation on ghost guns. Even that is nonsensical. There's nothing ghostly about them. You can see them. They're not invisible. They're not spectral or of the spirit world. They're physical guns that you just happen to make for yourself, the way that Americans have done for all time. Like always, Americans actually didn't used to have factories, right? Like anybody who goes back into their basic, let's call it middle school history. You heard about the cotton gin and Eli Whitney. Didn't we hear about this kind of stuff? You heard about Samuel Colt kind of revolutionizing and making all men equal, right? God declared it. And then you've got Colt out there actually doing it because people actually were able to own firearms for the first time. It used to be that you had to either make them or know someone who made them and do some kind of bartering or trading. All guns were made at home. Serial numbers are a relatively new thing. I actually am going to have to get my buddy Steven Stambolia on here again to talk about some of the ridiculousness of requiring a serial number. Because even the idea that a serial number must be on a gun, it's a relatively new idea. You can find that. You can buy... Well, you can't buy them anymore, but you can actually own, you can have them if you inherited them from family members going back only about 50 years ago. 50, 60 years ago, if you have guns that go back into the 1950s or 1960s, historical firearms, they do not have serial numbers on them. The concept that every gun must have a serial number is based in the idea that at some point in time, all firearms will be used in a crime, and therefore law enforcement will need to track them. But I'm just going to tell you, doing a trace on a serial number, it doesn't tell you what you think it does. It doesn't tell you the geolocation. These things are not, they're not like satellite mapping programs. It's a number that goes back to a database somewhere that the ATF is not even supposed to have. What happens is every time an FFL goes out of business, the ATF goes in and swoops up, collects all these records of 4473s so they can find the last time that it was legally transferred at a place that is required to do a legal transfer on a federal level by an FFL. But that doesn't mean that's what happens. I've got guns from all over. I've got guns that I bought that you have no way to know that I have until you find out that you have them. I bought them from some private party, as you're meant to do. In the same way that the government doesn't track chainsaws or hammers or any other tool, there's no reason that we need to have these serial numbers. I think this is a bad take. This was a 7-2 majority. Neil Gorsuch wrote it. They all sided together because they don't understand what it is that they're talking about. They're looking at crime as though that is the issue. But this is not the case for the overwhelming number of firearms. And we don't have numbers on how many guns have been built by people in their own hands. And having 1,600 turn up by police at crime scenes in 2017 and 19,000 pop up in 2021, none of those things matter. There's already rules. There are already laws against you using a gun in criminal activity. That's why they're called a crime scene. So how you got the tool almost becomes irrelevant to me. Oh, is it a stolen hammer? Was he buying it at an Ace Hardware? I don't care. If you beat someone to death with a hammer, you are probably in violation of a bunch of other laws. And you decided those didn't matter because you used a tool at a crime. This is the worst take. It continues to be a really, really bad idea. But in any case, they're supposed to review these. The Attorney General is supposed to look at them. Pam Bondi's records on gun is not very good. People who are the gun types, and I follow a bunch of them, they're very, very cautious about where you're going to see firearms pop up with this administration, because it could go either way. We could see a complete deregulation of suppressors. We could also see it go the other way because they don't get it. The upside is Don Jr., Donald Trump's son, is a gun guy, like a real gun guy. He does gun reviews. I've seen videos of him take down rifles and put them together. That's pretty cool. It's cool to have somebody that's at least in close proximity that came out of a New York family and now actually owns suppressors and machine guns and so on. All that stuff's good. But we don't have an AG who is going to determine policy or help align policy and is going to decide what to fight and what not to fight, what battles are going to get involved in on the court side of it. So here's Tom Massey. I think he's always the sensible one. He's talking about the issue for reciprocity, which is currently, I think it's called House Bill 38, but he'll tell it in just a second. It's a bill where they're deciding whether or not we are going to see concealed carry reciprocity across the United States. By the way, this should have been a very easy move directly after the Obergefell decision. If you can go get married in Massachusetts and you have to recognize that marriage in Texas if you're two men or two women, then there's no reason why an actual constitutional liberty, something that predates the Constitution, is a God-given right as defined by our founders, that thing needs to be codified across the nation. And I'm not even crazy about you having to go get a permit for it, but there's a couple of quick discussions. People who decide to go get permits, and I've done it both ways, by the way, folks. I've carried constitutionally, which is what I do today. I don't have a Texas permit. I don't feel a need to. I live in Texas, America. Thankfully, Texas, after years and years of moving forward, they actually used to be pretty retrograde on firearms rights. They started fixing themselves in the 90s. By the time I got out of the military in 2012, I went and got myself my first constitutional permit, or my first state-issued permit, rather. And then when I got out of the FBI, I found that I didn't need to carry one. I lived in Arizona for a little while, and I've lived in Texas, both now constitutional carry states, which is to say your permit is the Constitution because you were born in America and God gives you certain rights, including the right to self-defense. These are things that I'm not flexible on. Anyway, Tom Massey talking about this. It's nice to have a voice who gets this, who understands, who owns belt feds, or at least knows how to shoot them. I also saw a pretty cool video of J.D. Vance shooting them the other day. So, there's something to be said about having an administration that at least has people that are gun types around it. Tom Massey on this Reciprocity Act.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate H.R. 38, the Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act. I intend to vote for it, but and when it was first drafted, I think it was more complete. But what has happened is we've had a Supreme Court decision, and we've had some activity by the states, sort of changes the nature of H.R. 38. What is that activity? Well, 29 states are now constitutional carry. This will address Mr. Goldman's concern. 29 states are now constitutional carry. H.R. 38 sets up a situation where if you are in a state like Kentucky that has constitutional carry, and you travel to a state like California, which does not have constitutional carry, I have, in some ways, more rights to carry a gun in California than does a California resident under the framework that H.R. 38 would establish. Now, those were just a few exceptions here and there to H.R. 38 when there weren't that many constitutional carry states. But now there are 29 constitutional carry states. What else has happened? Well, the Supreme Court decision, Bruin, says that every state now has to issue a permit. So if I'm from Kentucky and I have constitutional carry, it means I now have constitutional carry in every state under H.R. 38. There's also sort of this other issue that Mr. Goldman, or actually Mr. Nadler's amendment got to that my amendment solves. Because my amendment, by the way, is just a statement of a bill that I have offered, which is national constitutional carry.
National constitutional carry is the way it should go, by the way. That's exactly what it says in the Bill of Rights. And you find that libs always have this issue. People on the political left have this really hard time. If the state law favors what they want to do, let's say more restrictive ownership of firearms, then they're big fans of states' rights. It suddenly becomes something that they're really interested in. And then you find out that when it comes to the national position on something, gay marriage, right? States would outlaw that. If they can go ahead and get they loved Roe v. Wade, which was a national priority. This was case law that was established by the federal courts, then they're suddenly like, all about federal sovereignty. The fact of the matter is, if you're willing to play whatever side suits you, you don't have any principles at all. We either have a supremacy clause in this country or we don't. Either the federal law doesn't allow you to do things, right? And it does give you certain access that you cannot restrict. Either it does or it doesn't. Either federal law is the supreme law of the land or not. If we can more narrowly and more aggressively tune back some of those things because of local priorities, that should be the case for everywhere, which means a state should be able to say, you can't be married, and we don't recognize gay marriage. I've always found these to be one-to-one. For some reason, leftists always want to talk about cars. There are so many more regulations on firearms than there are on cars. And a lot of it, it's like, okay, under what circumstance do you feel like you're entitled to travel on federally funded and state funded and publicly funded roadways when we're talking about something that you can own in your own house? And many Americans throughout almost all of the non-urban areas do on their own properties or on private properties where it has nothing to do with what the public is. It's not like we're talking about people going to public shooting ranges, carrying them and doing things in public with them. Most of the time, they're carrying their own private property in a way that you can't see it. I'm not a big fan of open carry, by the way, folks, unless you have like a real dressy piece. I've actually got a 44 mag revolver like right over here sitting on the wall in case I ever need a 44 mag revolver from the 70s. It's got a big cowboy rig and all that. I'm fine with you having a dress piece. If you want to have a Kimber or some sort of beautiful handmade Nighthawk custom that you wear to a barbecue in 1911 or some other, illogical carry gun, knock yourself the hell out. But in general, carrying a firearm and publicly showing it like a police officer does, all it does is say, I'm the guy with the gun you need to kill first if something bad happens. But concealed carry, which is very, very common, and actually is the way that most people think about it, you hear the word CHL, concealed handgun license, or CCW, depending on what state you live in. These things are a big deal. They're really smart, and they shouldn't actually be even necessary because either you're able to own a gun and therefore we trust you with your own God-given rights, or we don't. A little discussion that's going on, setting up maybe one of the dumbest members and most illiberal. Remember, this is a civil liberty to be able to do things that God gave you the right to do by virtue of you being born in the United States. This is a discussion of CCW holders, CHL holders, people who actually go through an additional background check so they can carry a concealed handgun license. They've gone to the state and say, hey, I'd like also additional privileges. Some of those privileges include, like, you don't have to do a 4473 in those states. You can just show them that you have one on file, which is in fact your concealed carry license. How about this? Do those people ever in any state represent more danger to the public than the general public at large? Almost always what you'll find is that CHL, CCW holders in the United States have a lower instance of crime than even law enforcement officers. Put that into your head. Background check private citizens are less likely to engage in a criminal violation of law than almost any other subset. And I don't know of anywhere that actually is the case that is not true, as is discussed. Of course, Dan Goldman doesn't have that information in front of him. So let's go ahead and hear this little takedown. We're going to do a couple of really good folks on the right destroying folks on the left in Congress and in hearings because it needs to be done.
Can you give me an example of any state where CCW holders commit homicide or any crime at a rate that is higher than the general population does?
I don't have that data in front of me, but I'm happy to look into it.
Well, because you made some claims about how if we allow this policy, it's going to unleash criminals or, violence upon the rest of the country. It would seem for that, maybe you'd have a point if there was some state out there where, standards are so low that you have all kinds of criminals getting their hands on CCWs and committing terrible crimes. But to my knowledge, there is no example of any such state. To the contrary, the data shows that CCW holders are usually, 10 times less likely to commit crimes, including violent crimes, than the general population.
Will the gentleman yield?
Sure.
I would just point out the data on gun violence in states that have lax gun laws and states that have strict gun laws, because what you will find is there's a direct correlation to gun violence and the amount of gun violence in the states depending on how strict and restrictive their gun laws are.
Okay, but that's not the question. On this bill, we're talking about CCW holders.
It's always false equivalency. They always want to act like one thing is happening when something else is going on. And by the way, is it really, Dan Goldman, is it really a direct correlation? Is there a one-to-one relationship with the increased amount of firearm laws and the decrease amount of gun violence, which is a made up term? No, it's not. It's complete bullshit. There's no question in my mind that what he's saying, he is using false words. And of course, we can't have the debate we want to have. We're talking about concealed handgun carry license holders. We are not talking about generally the speaking of whether or not they're like the use of guns. Of course, if you have more pools, there's going to be more pool drownings. If you have more guns, then maybe that. But then you got to explain to me Illinois. You've got to explain to me New York City. You got to explain to me Philadelphia. You've got to explain to me places where the laws don't actually line up with what they're saying. And there's tons of this. We're never going to get these people to make up their mind and actually speak honestly about it, but we might as well talk about it. Let me do a couple of other little interesting stories. I got some Texas stories. Then I want to get into the NPR thing, which I thought was kind of a fun little takedown. And then we'll get into this ongoing signal versus the noise thing, which we just can't get away from it. I'm not mad that the media is actually like obsessed with it. It's kind of fun. This is something I've had a lot of folks tag me on social media because they know I live in Texas. This is Governor Greg Hot Wheels Abbott. Yes, I'm going to start using that because I love it. He put out a tweet yesterday. And I don't remember if somebody tagged me in or if it just popped up in my feed. I think actually I follow Greg Abbott because I'm curious what's going on in Texas. This is something that kind of I was aware of because of an interview we did from our Sunday sit-down session. More on that in a second as well, because we've got a really good one coming up for this Sunday. Someone you've never heard of, I promise you. Well, most of you have never heard of. Family members have, if you listen to the show. But we've got a discussion here. This is Greg Abbott tweeting out that the Texas Funeral Service Commission. I'm not crazy about government overreach. I'm certainly not crazy about state control over funeral homes per se. But they've sent a cease and desist letter to the Epic compound. Yes, I'm aware that there's an Epic compound. Yes, I'm aware that a Muslim organization has bought 405 supposedly acres and is developing something and trying to have a self-contained Sharia law city. I don't think it's that dangerous, mostly because they're aware of it at the state level. And 405 acres in the state of Texas is like a drop in a massive, massive bucket. He says they are knowingly breaking state law in many ways, including operating funeral homes without a license. This is a crime. It won't be tolerated. He has a little press release down there about the East Plano Islamic Center and the fact that they're going to try to shut down this funeral home. I've seen some conservatives push back and say, hey, state, why don't you stay the hell out of the business of people who want to run a business? And normally I would agree with you, but there's a problem when it comes to some of the things that the federal government and the state government and your local government actually get involved in. One of the things, even though we agree here, this is a standard position that government is the worst solution to all problems, even when it's the only solution to the problem. This is my general and standing thesis. When you have a group of people, particularly a funeral home, hospitals are the other one, that is going to issue death certificates, there's money involved in that. And I'm not talking about permitting to put a body into the ground. I'm talking about the discussion that I had with my buddy Peter Johnson about when he was a cop in Minnesota and how none of the cops had ever been to a natural cause of death call, a dead on arrival call, for members of the Somali community, and that they believed that there was significant amounts of fraud to the tune of government benefits. That means Social Security payments continued on, because if you don't file a death certificate and it doesn't get recorded with the state, which rolls up to the federal government, they keep paying those Social Security checks. They keep paying pension checks, death benefits, whatever else are skipped, and you just keep seeing checks written out. So if you're a Muslim group that you've identified that a weakness in the U.S. system, and you bring in a bunch of people that don't have American culture and American customs and don't have American ethnicity, they don't have an American citizenship, a lot of them, and then you bring them in here, you naturalize them in, and you want people to live on generationally on Social Security from somebody else that died and you don't want to report it, this is the scam that has to be looked into. So Governor Abbott getting involved in that, I do like it for that very reason. While we're talking about Texas stuff, before we do our next sponsor, I just wanted to give you guys a political ad. As I said, I'm kind of keeping an eye on things happening in Texas, and this is always troubling. We saw yesterday Donald Trump go out and endorse Lindsey Graham. I despise Lindsey Graham. I think the people of South Carolina need to figure it out. I get it that you have open primaries. I get it that Democrats can come in and vote on behalf of Lindsey Graham because he might as well be on their team. But something needs to go down. We need a strong contender in there. The second thing is in Texas, and I'm not going to be the guy. Don't ask me to run for Senate. I have no interest in being part of that. But somebody needs to run out there. So find me the best candidate to take down John Cornyn, who's scum. He's doing this awful little thing like, look how MAGA I am. So here's a John Cornyn ad. Do not fall for this stuff, folks. This is more Texas politics. It matters because even though we have a 2 Republican Congress people or Senate seats, one of them, Ted Cruz. The other one, John Cornyn. Is he really a Republican in any meaningful way? Can he just retire and go be a bootleg John Lithgow somewhere else? Here he is.
In President Trump's first term, he made America great.
The unemployment rate is at its lowest in 50 years. Markets are at all-time highs, and GDP is growing.
And Texas Senator John Cornyn had his back.
And we're especially grateful to your wonderful senators, John Cornyn and Ted Cruz.
This is John Cornyn. It's an honor to represent Texas in the U.S. Senate. In President Trump's first term, I was Republican whip, delivering the votes for his biggest wins.
Yeah. And then I was totally not with him because it wasn't really expedient for me. But now I'm back with him because he's back in the office. And if I need to run on MAGA because that's how it's going to get me into office, then that's what I'm going to keep doing because I'm 1,000 years old and I don't know what else to do. I don't want to retire and go be around my family. Gross, dude. Just awful. Let's get John Cornyn out of there. That's very much a position piece. But I'm telling you, while I was thinking about Texas, I thought about that. All right. Let's talk about one of our sponsors. This one is going to be for Silent. I just put all my stuff in. Actually, I've got 2 phones in there. You guys know one of the reasons why I know these Faraday products are really important, especially at my desk, is I've got really high-end monitors that are speakers that play the sound so I can kind of mix things together. And I can actually hear incoming RF distortions on a regular basis. They all cease when I put my bag into the Silent Faraday bag. So for whatever it's worth, they work really, really well. And if you're around electronics, you might as well have one of these. It doesn't matter whether it's big government, big tech, corporate America, criminals, maybe you're working on sensitive electronics. You want to make sure you keep those signals. You want your privacy uncompromised 24/7. You have to protect yourself. You can block all these things by using a Silent Faraday product. They do block all incoming and outgoing signals. I can attest to it. I literally leave my phone on top of a monitor that tells me if it's getting signals, and I can always hear it. If you want to make your devices invisible and safe from the outside world, if you want to stop them from flooding you with this kind of stuff, you can always get their backpacks, their phone sleeves. They even make a pair of pants that does it. They do have a patented RF signal blocking technology. They work really well. I bought the cheap stuff from Amazon when I was working in the FBI. I don't recommend them at all. You can save money, but you're also going to have something that leaks. They always do inevitably. These don't. I've tested them. I've tested them across many miles on Texas highways. They work against the same stuff that we used to do when I was working in counterintelligence. We would test these things, and it's almost back in the day. All we would use is tin foil and an ammo can. These are much more elegant looking, especially if you go to like a business meeting. Go to slnt.com/KYLE. Save yourself 15%. Again, silent.com/Kyle. Saves you 15%. Plus, you'll get free shipping on your qualifying orders. You want to stay ahead of what's coming. You want to secure your privacy today. If you're worried about EMPs or any of your devices, they make all kinds of different stuff. Military compliant things, berry compliant if you need it made in the United States. You could choose your poison there. You can choose whether you want to have it overseas. It's a little bit cheaper. You can have it made in America if you're that guy, and you can get it stepped up. Silent.com, slnt.com/KYLE. Link in the show description as usual. Let's do a couple of other little things. Our Sunday special, I don't usually tease them out, our Sunday sit down. I don't always tease these out. I talked to a guy named Cameron Smith. We just taped it yesterday. I wanted to show you what it looks like, what we're going to be talking about, because when I saw these, I immediately wanted to talk to him. I saw a kindred spirit. And since we've got another Texas congressperson that's on this one, I'm just going to give you kind of a visual. If you guys have not seen this, go to our Spotify, go to Rumble, or go to YouTube and check out the visuals for the show at about 30 minutes in. And you'll see these are some of the trading cards, the playing cards for this game that he's created. This one is Eye Patch McCain, which you may recognize as a very similar to Dan Crenshaw looking figure. That Sweet Rhino Magit. And then it gives you some of the abilities. These are trading cards that are both kind of funny. They're a great joke. They would make a great gift. But additionally, there's actually a game there, which we're going to talk about and we get into in the Sunday sit-down interview, which ends to be just kind of like two guys riffing on funny stuff. You can see there's Alec Jones, quite funny. To be honest, he's kind of retarded. I sent this actually to Alex Jones yesterday, and he said he wants to have him on the show as well because it's just really funny. It's clever. It's stuff that if you pay attention to the news, yeah, it's a real specific kind of audience, but it's an opportunity to radicalize maybe your teen children. It's an opportunity to have kind of a beverage, like an adult beverage, sit down and play a card. I see this as being Magic the Gathering or a Pokemon or something like that, which I didn't play those, but that crossed with like a Cards Against Humanity. And for those of us that are into the political sphere, that we actually want to talk about things that are ongoing, you want to have interesting conversations, but also have a sense of humor about it. This is some of it. These are two other cards that he sent me. These are the transparent ones, or the, what do they call them? Holographic cards. These are collectibles. You could put this on your desk and just like be a conversation piece. This one is Corn Pop. He's a hero card. Leave this kids alone. Talking about petting the hare at the pool. Freaking hilarious. And then Representative Omar. Brotherly love. If you know, you know. These things are all inside jokes for conservatives that have been paying attention to what goes on in the news cycle. So giving you kind of a little preview of what we're going to get into. I think it's fun. I think you guys will get a kick out of it. And it's the opposite of what we're going to talk about next, which is the woke nonsense that exists at NPR. We just can't get away from it. So here you go. The woke boss of NPR was squirming and backtracking in Congress as she's grilled about calls for whites to pay for reparations. These theatrical hearings are a little bit troubling. This is coming from the Daily Mail, so from folks overseas. More on overseas stuff in a minute. Her name is Catherine Mayer. We've played clips of her before. If you guys are familiar, she's pretty. She's a tall, blonde, pretty, well-spoken white lady who talks about the most woke leftist garbage. This is like Steve Friend's enemy. I'm sure she goes to brunch with her lady friends and wishes that she could convert her kid into a transgender person. That's just my guess from listening to NPR over the years. And they have gotten more and more focused on trans and gay nonsense to the point where one would have to assume, I think I actually said this to Alex Jones, that if you listen to NPR, you would believe that 60% of the world has a gender that is not matching their born gender, and they have a sexual orientation that is not heterosexual. You would think that if you listen to NPR. It wasn't always like that. They were always on the left. But it's kind of funny. So the question came up, is there political bias at NPR? And of course, this woman who has spent a lifetime, she's the CEO over there. She's the person that runs it all. She got owned by Jim Jordan, which is not hard. Jim Jordan does a pretty good job in hearings. That's his Olympic sport. And then also by freshman Congressman Brandon Gill. And I know Brandon a little bit. We worked together on Police State. I coached him in some of the acting roles. Brandon's a really, really sharp guy. And he's Dinesh D'Souza's son-in-law, so that's also relevant. He's representing Texas, so there's another Texas win there. And he's really good at this. I mean, he comes from a sort of journalistic background from running a website that did that for a while. So he is also, just like the folks, we should send him some of these trading cards. He knows all of these little inside scoops. He's got his staff working really well to pull all the great quotes, and they're doing the things that the leftists always try to do, jamming you up for your own words. He's just making these people deal with like the Saul Alinsky, make them face their own standards. And it's really fun to watch. So we'll start off with Jim Jordan talking about the question, just a real simple setup. Is there political bias at NPR? And of course, her denial. And then we'll get into Brandon Gill in a second, crushing her down, which is really enjoyable too. So Jim Jordan first.
Former senior business editor for NPR.
How long do you work at NPR?
I believe he was there just over 25 years.
25 years? Award-winning journalist? Did he win any awards?
Our time did not
Peabody
overlap.
Award? That's pretty important, isn't it?
That is, absolutely.
So pretty distinguished journalist, right?
Certainly.
And he wrote a long story about what you do at NPR. Is NPR biased?
Congressman, I have never seen any instance of political bias determining editorial decisions. No.
Well, Mr. Berliner, in his story last year, wrote, in the D.C. area, editorial positions at NPR, he said he found 87 registered Democrats, 0 Republicans. Is that accurate?
We do not track the numbers or the voter registration, but I find that concerning.
Award-winning journalist who worked 25 years at NPR, Mr. Berliner, was he lying when he wrote that?
I am not presuming such. I just we don't track that information about our journalists.
87 to 0, and you're not biased?
I think that is concerning if those numbers are accurate.
Yeah, it is a little concerning, isn't it? Wouldn't you be worried about that? Okay, fine, that's fun. And then we get to the real setup, which is that she's just this goofy lady who has the most woke, stupid ideas that you could ever have. Here's Brandon Gill just leveling this poor woman who, she's very polished when she speaks, is she not? I mean, you can hear she's very comfortable lying because she's been paid to do this for a long time. This is the space she operates in. That's what propaganda operators look like. And so here we have Brandon Gill laying it out, reading some of the tweets that she just is like, no, I don't recall that. This is classic. This is what they do on the hearings. That's why these things don't actually mean that much, but it is great for a soundbite. It's nice to see a freshman congressman coming in and starting with the fire and not pretending to be someone like Jasmine Crockett. Maybe a little taste of that in a second, too.
Miss Marr, I want to start with you. Just generally, would you say you generally agree or disagree with the following statement? The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles?
I would not say I agree with that, sir.
You're not. That's good to hear. It's interesting because a lot of your thinking, as expressed by your public statements, is deeply infused with economic and cultural Marxism. Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't? You tweeted something to that effect. You said, I grew up feeling superior. Ha, how white of me. Why did you tweet that?
I think I was probably reflecting on what it was to grow up in an environment where I had lots of advantages.
It sounds like you're saying that white people feel superior.
I don't believe that anybody feels that way, sir. I was just reflecting on my own experiences.
Do you think?
She was just reflecting on her own experiences of feeling superior. It's pretty good. He skewers her to this. I'll post this over on local so you guys can see it as well. I think it's one of the really good takedowns, and of course it was shared around as one of those viral moments. But good for him as a freshman congressman just coming in. I want to see good people do good things. I was cautiously optimistic that he'd do a good job, and he's really holding a lot of feet to the fire, so good for him. If you guys want to support us, you're seeing over there, you could be on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. We may be suppressed, but we are still going to be here live at 0930 if you guys want to watch the program live. It's an option for you. You can also watch us over on YouTube, where it's youtube.com/@Kyle Seraphin. You got to put the @ sign in there. So if you want to do that, you can also find X the same way. Our locals channel is where we have a subscriber base, and if you want to support the program financially, you can totally do that, and we really appreciate it. You get a couple of perks, like you get our show a little bit early, and you have your own private chat there. We do a call-in show on Thursday nights, which we'll do here. And then lastly, Spotify, KyleSeraphinShow.com. You saw it on the screen. You guys can go there and go to KyleSeraphinShow.com. It'll take you directly to our Spotify link. It's just a cheat code for it. And if you wanted to share that with a friend, hey, check out a Kyle Seraphin Show episode, you can take them right to the main page there. Lastly, if you guys will like and share and make sure you're subscribing, we always appreciate that. It's a big deal here. If everybody shared one time to one person who actually went in there and looked at it, we double our audience. And I think that'd be good. We're touching stories that not everybody is touching on. I think that's what's useful. We're not going to get sucked into the mainstream media drama all the time. And mostly what I'd like to do is just debunk that stuff. So I hope you guys appreciate that. Let's go ahead and say thanks to our friends over at My Patriot Supply as well. While I'm thinking about it, folks, this is the offer they have right now. I love this offer because it gives you a lot of flexibility. It's a 72-hour food pack. You get 4 of them for free when you buy the 1-month food pack, okay? When disaster strikes, the first thing that happens is grocery stores get emptied. Usually it happens overnight. The worst time to prepare for any emergency is going to be in the aftermath. It's already too late by that time. Smart Americans, they do trust My Patriot Supply to help them prepare before the crisis. We always say prepare so you don't have to repair. PrepareLikeKyle.com is the website. If you go there, they're making it easier than ever. You can get the 4-week emergency food kit. You'll get 4 free 72-hour food kits along with it. It's almost 2 weeks of free bonus meals. That means you can scatter them around to places you want, vehicles, go bags, and so on. You can stash them at locations you might want to run out to, like your cabin in the woods or your secondary home or whatever. With each of these kits, you're going to get 2,000 calories per day. The meals are easy to prepare. They last for up to 25 years, so you have peace of mind that you don't have to use them right away. You just hold on to them. It's an insurance policy that you hold on to there. There's no last-minute panic buying. There's no empty shelves you have to worry about. You know you got food available to you. Stock up now before the deal disappears. You can get them. If emergency hits, it's going to be too late already. Prepare. Again, that keyword, preparelikeKyle.com. Show notes will have it again. PrepareLikeKyle.com. You can claim the 4 free 72-hour food kits. Plus, you can get that 1 month. Check them out. This is a good deal. I like this one because it's an entry level and it also gives you a couple of pieces of flexibility. PrepareLikeKyle.com. I'm going to carry on here. Let's see. I got some other fun stuff in here. I had Trump talking about Ashley Babbitt, and I think this is interesting because, again, we're re-adjudicating a lot of stuff from the last administration. January 6th, that happened on Trump's first term. There's a lot of wrongs that haven't been fixed. Again, I'm focusing in on Congress people that suck. We've got some new blood in there. I'm focusing in on stuff that's happening in the state of Texas for some reason. There's a lot of that going on. And then we're getting this sort of like, we have to re-adjudicate January 6th. We have to relook at Crossfire Hurricane, which he just did the declassification on. And Trump is talking about Ashley Babbitt in an interview and seems to hold the same opinion that I do. The interviewer here is from, I think, Newsmax, and he's stating something very simple. This was not a justifiable shoot. So we watched weaponized government cover up for itself, as you'd expect. Trump is actually talking in about how, yeah, we got to look into this kind of stuff. We can't just let these things slide. And he's kind of saying that they want to investigate it. I would love for this to be the case because there should be justice for it. Just like there should be justice for my friend Garrett O'Boyle. He was investigated improperly by the FBI, found that he didn't do the thing that they said, and he still hasn't been hired back. In the same way that they got to make right by the rest of the FBI whistleblowers, we're already seeing it over at the IRS. It needs to be done here. Obviously, I benefit from that. But more importantly, America, if you want people to come forward and call out malfeasance, you can't let these people just disappear into the ether. So we're going to hit that real quick. Here's Trump talking about Ashley Babbitt. I just think this is a useful clip. It tells you about mindset.
About Ashley Babbitt. It was a bad shooting. My father can tell you that. Anybody.
It's a terrible thing.
I don't know if you know this, but the Department of Justice right now is still kind of fighting that case. The family of Ashley Babbitt is suing the government, wrongful death. The DOJ right now officially is still opposing that lawsuit, trying to justify it. Shouldn't that be something that can just be settled at this point?
Well, I'll look into that. I mean, you're just telling me that for the first time. I haven't heard that. I'm a big fan of Ashley Babbitt, okay? And Ashley Babbitt was a really good person who was a big MAGA fan, Trump fan, and she was innocently standing there. They even say trying to sort of hold back the crowd. And a man did something to her that was unthinkable when he shot her. And I think it's a disgrace. I'm going to look into that. I did not know that, no.
And the officer who shot her, Michael Byrd, is still on duty. They gave him a raise, and they gave him a medal, and I believe a promotion.
I think it's a disgrace.
He's a federal employee. Would you?
Yeah, he is a federal employee. The problem is he works for Congress, folks. That's what the issue is here. And so Congress having a law enforcement branch, it's always been a problem. The U.S. Capitol Police, I don't understand how they exist. They should have zero law enforcement authorities. I'm not real crazy about them being able to carry a gun. Maybe you put them under the city of D.C. There's a problem here when you have executive authorities that have vested in Congress. This is a conflict. This is an actual constitutional crisis. It's not all doom and gloom. It's not all sadness. I wanted to play you one funny clip right now in the middle while we're going because we can kind of heavy. We're kind of talking heavy on civil rights and this kind of thing. This is something I thought was quite funny. This is Donald Trump talking about fertility. It has nothing to do with anything else out there other than he said he was going to push forward more babies and IVF. I'm not a big fan of that either. I think IVF is actually pretty evil. Even those of you who are conceived by that or that was the only way you could have a baby, I think God's plan is far more important. I also think that it opens up the door for abuse. It opens the door for that thing we talked about earlier where gay couples can go in and buy a baby and surrogacy. And there's a lot of nasty things that come in with the undercurrent. It sounds good on paper right up until you get to the point where there's designer babies being bought by people who ought not to have them, including people celebrated by the right, like Dave Rubin. I don't want that for the babies, because what it means is that you're not thinking about another person. You're actually thinking about yourself. Narcissism always ends up badly. Anyway, Donald Trump has a moment of self-reflection where he calls himself the fertilization president, and it's really funny to me. It's just like a really human moment. Sometimes you just say something out loud and you're like, crap, I'm going to own it. And he does. This is the charm, I think, that people see personally with a Donald Trump, that he can kind of laugh at himself. So he does this. He gets a belly laugh from the whole room, regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on. This is just kind of charming. Even if I don't like the politics that are being discussed, I do like this. This makes me kind of smile. It makes me think, okay, maybe it'll all be all right.
You're doing great on it. And we're going to have tremendous goodies in the bag for women, too. The women, between the fertilization and all of the other things that we're talking about, it's going to be great. We're joined today. Fertilization. I'm still very proud of it. I don't care. I'll be known as the fertilization president, and that's okay. That's not bad. That's not bad. I've been called much worse.
Actually, I like it, right? I like it. Thank you.
Like, I was just smiling. I was listening to it. I wasn't even paying attention. I heard him just go like, actually, I kind of like it, like whatever. The fertilization president, and he's buddy with Elon, the other fertilization king out there, making babies left and right. So yeah, Trump's got babies. He cares about babies. I think that's funny. I think being called the fertilization president, you could do a lot worse. They've called him Nazi and a fascist and literally Hitler and all the other terrible things. So anyway, that's such a regular thing to do. I got a little tear coming out of my eye because it made me laugh. It's just good. It's so human. It's a real thing. And that's the opposite of what you see with these other people. Anyway, I want to go to this fake scandal that's going on that continues to be rolling. I want to do a contrast for you here. The contrast is media outrage talking about the Signal scandal, the Signal gate, all this BS. I am still firmly in the camp of this is not a real scandal, that this was an operation that was set up. And here's why. Number one, I see zero reactions. I don't see anybody throwing a thumbs up emoji or 100, bro, or whatever that people do. That is how men, no matter serious or otherwise. I have worked with people in the national security sphere. I have worked with politicians. I have worked with journalists and reporters. Regular people respond and react on social media and on Signal chats and group chats on iMessage differently than they do in their professional life where they are typing up or having meetings of a memo. I've also seen some of these AI models analyze this conversation. One of them said, somebody tweeted it at me, I get it. They said 80% chance this was scripted, that it stays within the verbal parameters of the way these people talk, but also it really looks like it's trying to imitate it. The only thing that's going to convince me that this was a legitimate mistake, and I'm not even sure that even does, is if they decide to fire Mike Waltz, which has been discussed. For some reason, people are talking about Pete Hegseth. Here's the case against Pete Hegseth, which is really an interesting take. A guy who apparently didn't set up the group, who dropped this into the group, and then we're going to debunk it because, as I said, it's a media talking point right now, which means it's a leftist political talking point. Pete Hegseth said the following: team update. Time now, 11:44 ET. Weather is favorable, just confirmed with CENTCOM. We're a go for the mission. Then you've got 12:15 ET, F-18 strike or launch. Then you've got 13:45 trigger based, says that there's a strike window opens. Terrorist target at his known location should be on time. Drone strike launch, and they say the type of drone. None of these are specific vehicles. None of these are specific tail numbers. None of these are specific call signs. None of these are telling you the routes. They're not telling you the locations. They're not telling you the spins, the frequencies under which they're going to contact each other. They're not telling you the combo plan or any of the contingencies. You don't have the PACE acronym, primary, alternate, contingency, emergency comms. You've got no drop deadline where they might have an abort plan. They don't have anything on here that this is sort of a rough outline of what we're going to do. And by the way, none of this stuff is confirmable until after it happens. You'd be batshit crazy as a journalist to publish this. This is one of those things that it continues to look to me. It continues to look like someone set up the Atlantic to run this thing where now we are talking about Signal and how we feel about Europe and whether or not the Houthis are serious as a fighting force. By the way, interesting, speaking of propaganda, and NPR found this on the other propaganda outlet, Voice of America. UN experts say that Iran has transformed Yemen's Houthi rebels into a potent military force. No mention, by the way, of anti-aircraft capabilities. They've got, machine guns, and they've got abilities to go and strike ships, sort of, unless we decide to thwack them, as my buddy George Hill referred to it. So you've got maybe a frago is what they would call this, is a fragment of an order, but it's not even a frago because it has no specifics to be able to launch it. So that doesn't stop these people from talking about it. In fact, in the middle of the hearing that Kash Patel was hit, they said, are you going to open up an investigation, sir, into this leaked classified material? I'm going to give you even more on that in a second. Patel just smashes this down. Again, we're doing smashes in hearings, so here it is.
Another day has passed. Do you
Well, actually, it was the night before the hearing.
Now that another day has passed, do you believe that it's now time potentially for the FBI to open an investigation into this?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Because you're the director of the FBI, you don't believe it's appropriate to comment on that?
Because there's a process in place, there's an ongoing litigation, and the National Security Council is reviewing this matter. And I'm not going to discuss any open or closed investigation.
That ongoing investigation, literally, the lawsuit happened today or yesterday afternoon, and the idea that you don't have an opinion on this at this point is frustrating to me.
No, it's not. I'm not going to prejudge any matters, and the men and women of the FBI will call the balls and strikes.
Reclaiming my time,
not
sir.
you.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have...
Gentleman's recognized. You have
Thank
4
you.
seconds remaining.
No, I have more than
You
that
have 2
because
seconds
Mr.
remaining.
Patel would not acknowledge
Gentlewoman's time has expired.
You got 4 seconds. You have 2 seconds as you complain. Piss off. We're moving on. What he said is they're going to call balls and strikes. That's fair. Listen, this is an issue that is going to be very complicated by something that was passed under Barack Obama or signed into law. One of the last things we're going to talk about is executive orders and the hundreds of them that the 100 plus that Donald Trump has signed in. In the beginning of the Barack Obama administration in 2009, there was an update to an executive order. It was 13-526. Go out and read it yourself. 13-526, and then the question about Espionage Act, which is what everyone's talking about. What it says specifically in the Espionage Act is that you cannot pass national defense material, classified material, et cetera, to people who are not authorized persons. That's the letter and the verbiage of the statute. The problem with the executive order 13-526 is it tells you who has the ability to authorize, to classify and declassify. And that means that the president and the vice president basically have the exhaustive authority under the executive. But it's also been subjugated to information that belongs in the purview of agency heads and department heads. In other words, cabinet level people and folks that are the head of their particular agency. If there's classified material that originates and is derivatively classified underneath that particular agency, think National Geospatial Agency, right? NGA, they're a map-based agency. They do GeoInt or a geographic intelligence or a geospatial intelligence. Those people, they can actually classify or declassify, and I don't know how big the process is, but at the end of the day, the process is just policy. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily force of law. The executive branch determines what is and what is not classified. So you can read someone in, you can not read someone in. They do this all the damn time, folks. There's a thing that's called PAM. I'm going to just educate you very quickly. When you want to run a really good double operation, when you want to run somebody against they think that they have penetrated the United States government, we're going to turn around and run that person against the country that seems that they've penetrated us. This idea of PAM, or also known as passage material, is that they quietly declassify things that were otherwise classified. They can leave classified markings on them. They can make it look legitimate. In order to run an operation to smoke people out as moles, in order to pass fake information that is now outdated, it's previously classified or currently classified, but it is outdated material. They can use it for all kinds of things, to be able to establish bona fides, to give false information, as George Hill called it, haversacking, where you're basically dropping a bag or a knapsack full of documents that the enemy found it, or this journalist happened to be part of it. A digital haversacking operation is very, very likely in this case, only because they're never going to confirm it, which we'll find out if they don't confirm that there was a mistake made. And I'm talking about confirmed through actions like getting rid of people. Then you look at who was on there. The journalist was the last guy to be added. It looks scripted. He couldn't run anything until after the fact. And even funnier, when he decided to run something, here's Goldberg saying the shit that we got, sorry, I didn't say it that way. The things that we got were too classified. We could never show them to the American people. We would compromise those people we care so much about, the military. Sure, the Atlantic. You really care about the military only when it hurts Trump. And then a couple days later, they're like, by the way, here's all the signal chat. We're going to put it out there in the world. Here we go.
I didn't publish this, and I continue not to publish it because it felt like it was too confidential,
he's so
too
principled,
technical, and I worry, honestly, that sharing that kind of information in public could endanger American military personnel.
3 days later.
At a certain point, you have to let the citizens of America just look and understand what's going on.
And that certain point was 3 days later, dude. Okay, cool. I get it. Yeah, that must make sense. That's why you got guys like Ted Lieu, who's not a very honest operator, working out of California. We got two California types out of here, too. We had Kevin Kiley earlier, who was asking the reasonable questions to Dan Goldman about, hey, how come you don't talk about concealed carry holders? Same thing. Now you've got Ted Lieu. He's the other side of the coin in California, representing the majority of California, which is really bad takes. Apparently, Pete Hegseth has to resign because somebody, quote unquote, accidentally added this journalist who was totally scrupulous and would never publish anything, but suddenly published it 3 days later. Here we go.
Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth should resign. He recklessly texted operational details of military strikes, including time, place, location, and sequencing of those strikes, to a journalist. Had that information gotten to the Houthis, American pilots could have been shot down, Navy sailors could have been targeted. His reckless actions endangered the lives of American troops endanger our national security, and makes it so that our allies don't want to share sensitive classified information with us anymore.
Boo freaking who. Voice of America again. Iran is making the Yemen Houthi rebels into a very potent military force. We have to believe that they're super capable, even though they don't have anti-aircraft capabilities, even though our fighters flew in there with no specifics. You want to know the final take on this one? As far as I can tell, were there any names? Were there any specifics? Were there any targets? Was this actually something classified? There's actually a thing that has to be included for it to actually fall into the fully classified realm. People talk around, whether you like it or not, whether they should do it or not. People talk around classified material all the time without getting specific. Without specifics, oftentimes the material itself is not, in fact, classified. It's the sources or methods that indicate how that information was gathered. Saying it is no big deal. How you got it might be classified because you were doing a signal intercept. You were listening in on a phone call between two people. And by telling people the information you got, which is just stuff that's being discussed in an open air market, the way that you got it, because you had some satellite, dropping in and reading lips or whatever the hell you were using, shotgun mics from outside, and you had some undercover source. That is the way that you would actually expose. And that's why it's actually sensitive. This is a real simple thing. Do we have any specifics? Tulsi Gabbard debunking this. I think this is the definitive answer. Again, I'm not a cheerleader for the Trump administration. You'll know I'll tell them when they're wrong, especially on guns. But this one seems stupid, and it's really funny that they're so distracted by it.
Were there any names in the signal chat?
No.
Any targets?
No.
Any locations?
No.
Was there a unit name or location of that unit?
There was not.
Were there any routes described in the signal chat?
No.
Wouldn't an operational plan contain that type of information?
Every operational plan I've ever seen has contained that information.
Thank you. Shifting to the real threats to America, the southern border.
I really like those. I like it when they end with the cheers. But seriously, is that not a mic drop moment? They can't let it go. They're going to be distracted by it. This does seem to be the reason why you would do this in the first place, at least to me. Caitlin Collins, who is definitely not Scott Pressler and definitely not a man. Caitlin, I don't think she actually is a man. I think Caitlin Collins is totally a woman, based on seeing her previously when she worked at the Daily Caller. I do think that she's gotten like full lefty. She's now aspiring to be the CEO of NPR, basically, like we just saw Catherine Mayer. But here she is talking to Doug Collins. They're supposed to be talking about Veterans Affairs. She can't help herself. She just can't help herself. She needs to get an answer from a cabinet member about this signal thing. If this was the purpose in the end, they're doing a great job of getting them distracted about something that matters not at all.
Do you believe that a mistake was made here, though, to have this conversation, to add a reporter, and to have it on an unsupported, classified group setting?
Caitlin, as I've just told you, I've just answered the question. I wasn't part of it. And, I'm not going to speculate more than what the president's already talked about and those who've been involved have talked about. But we'd love to talk about the veterans.
Yeah, and I do have questions about the veterans. But given what we saw with the group chat and how this was used, you are a member of the cabinet. You obviously know these other members, several of them who were in there. Is this typical for the cabinet to have conversations over Signal? Is this something that you use?
Well, Caitlin, Senator, you undoubtedly do not want to talk about the VA. I have a question as VA Secretary. As Cabinet, I want to ask you, because I've been curious about this, because my job is to take care of veterans, and I would like to know why CNN is hostile to veterans, especially one in Florida, where you just had a $5 million defamation suit taking offense at a veteran who was trying to help people. In fact, one of your employees actually said, we're going to nail him. I have a question for you, Caitlin. Is that employee still employed? Are you really concerned about veterans? So if we don't want to talk about veterans now, you want to talk about everything else, I'd like to hear from CNN as the veteran cabinet secretary why CNN seems to have a problem.
I don't know why. I just like watching her go like, someone's hitting me in the face on my own show. I don't like this. It does make for some pretty good TV when somebody turns around on you. I do love being in interviews and then turning around and interviewing the person who's interviewing me. That's sometimes fun. I usually don't get into hostile interviews because people don't want to jump in with me. Maybe they just, I don't have a high enough profile. I would enjoy it. I think interviews and conversation like that can be a blood sport. So that's pretty fun. But let's put it up here. What are they not talking about? They're not talking about tariffs, which we were hearing about being the dumbest thing and the scariest thing and so bad. Donald Trump's going to have tariffs. God forbid we have that happen. The 25% tariffs are coming in on foreign-made cars. By the way, that's not going to affect almost any car that most Americans buy. I was looking for a car. Mercedes makes cars here. BMW makes cars here. If they make them overseas and you want to pay more money, okay, there it goes. Then you have to pay more. Ferrari, Bugatti, Lamborghini, Maserati. If you want to buy a super high-end luxury car, you probably don't care about paying 25% more. You're buying it not because you need the performance, but because you want to have a status symbol. Okay, your status symbol just got more expensive, and you can pay down some of the debt. But if you're buying a Japanese import, most of them are made in the United States, which is the whole point of this stuff. Bring these things in domestically, have the things that are made domestically be shielded, incentivize businesses to bring and invest here. There's been several movements by car manufacturers from overseas to put actual new facilities into the United States because of these of late. Like they've announced one. I just missed it. I can't remember who it was. It was Kia or Honda, Hyundai or something like that. Just built a brand new plant, or announced plans to build a brand new plant, which means American jobs, American manufacturing. It defends American people in the middle class who have mobility. And so you're not hearing them talk about this and demonizing that. I think all that is, like, this seems to be the problem. The news media is easily distracted, so they go with that. And then, of course, they either do that or they do the emotional appeal. I just ran down another story. This is from NBC, and I found this to be quite interesting as well. Things that are not being talked about that much because you can't hear about it. But how about the people at ICE are now on track to basically get rid of at least 1 million if they continue at the same pace for the next 4 years? That's not nothing, deporting 1 million people. I'd like to see more, and so would you. And so that's why you have these crying things. This is coming from NBC. This is a big deal. A man has been detained by ICE for more than 2 years, claims he's a U.S. citizen. It's a quote-unquote nightmare. His name is Mario Rene Lopez. He's being held at a facility in Virginia, said that he obtained citizenship as a minor from his mom, who was naturalized in 1998. And then in the second paragraph, I identified something that looks like it's a problem. And I ran it by my friends over at CIS, and they're like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff you have to ask. By the way, this guy is a convicted criminal. He spent 7 years in prison, so he's not like the guy that I want to go to bat for. Again, you're making the mainstream media defend criminals or people that have been, at least convicted of crimes that came here potentially illegally. Here's the funny story. 2 paragraphs. I'll just read it to you right away. I see problems with it. It's called derivative citizenship. That's the process that he's claiming. It means that your parent was naturalized and therefore you are also naturalized. But the key is, where were you living? What was your resident status? And what was going on when that parent was, in fact, naturalized? They make a bunch of analogies here, but they don't handle the specifics of why DOJ is going after this. Here's what it says. Mario Rene Lopez is being locked up in an ICE detention facility. Very hard to experience because he can't be with his family. The conditions are tough. But above it all, it's very hard because he insists that he's a U.S. citizen. Quote, I came to the United States when I was 12 years old. With a permanent residence because my mother was a legal resident and she put in the papers and then came in to pick me up in El Salvador. His mom was naturalized in 1998 when he was like 16 years old. Then she went to El Salvador and brought him back here. As I understand it, it's quite simple. You actually have to be in the United States when your parent is naturalized if you want to get the sort of derivative. And then you have to ask for it. You have to actually file paperwork and make it happen. My mom became a citizen. I was a minor. I automatically got derivative citizenship from my mother. For no reason, I'm being detained. That's not really how the system works there, Chief, okay, for whatever it's worth. ICE detained him multiple times. There are all kinds of situations. Automatic acquisition of citizenship by parents. There's nothing that happens automatic in the government. Imagine this. Any of you who have ever gotten a government document, how about you had a DD-214 because you got out of the military? You automatically are supposed to get it, but many of you don't. I didn't get it. I had to go ask for a DD-214. And then when you get it, it automatically shows up and it's wrong. And it's got stuff on there that's not accurate. And it misses some of the things that you got. And your awards and your ribbon rack is not correct. And the schools that you attended are not all in there. The training you had, your deployments, your days overseas and so on. Like I said, I got this thing right over my shoulder right here. It's right back there. It's an American flag with a thin blue line on it. It came from my unit in Washington, D.C. when I was working for the FBI by smart people. The guy who did it, military veteran, West Pointer, good dude. It's the most FBI thing I own. Why? Because the dates that are there that says thank you for your service to our unit are not the dates that I actually served in the unit. It's the dates that my supervisor was at the unit, which is hilarious. It's freaking hilarious that he put his own dates down on my plaque because they missed it by 6 months. I'm just telling you, this happens all the time. There's nothing automatic in the government. So the fact that he thinks that he automatically was a citizen simply because his mom got it and then they went and got him in El Salvador, it's just funny to me. And again, the opportunity cost is they're covering this with emotion. They're kind of skewing it. There's no media bias, though, not at NPR and certainly not at NBC. Sure. I wanted to give you contrast about this stuff, this big scandal that we're having about Pete Hegseth, about Waltz and other things. How about is the Trump administration really that scandalous? Because we really haven't solved this problem yet. Remember when Lloyd Austin was the Secretary of Defense and we disastrously pulled out of Afghanistan after 20 years of war and we left a bunch of people dead? Why don't we just hone in on the fact that they brought in 125,000 people that have no business being in the United States? God knows who they are. Maybe they're the ones that are out there in that Islamic center in Texas. But yeah, killing off 13 people who are service members, no big deal to these guys. I don't want to hear anything about like the fact that he published a quote unquote war plan when in fact nothing happened. Meanwhile, here's a legitimate war plan that they did. They ended the war and they killed off Americans, and there's been no justice on that. So again, I'd spare me with this sort of outrage nonsense.
But do you have regrets about the withdrawal from Afghanistan?
I support the president's decision.
Do you have regrets about the withdrawal or how the withdrawal occurred from Afghanistan that cost the lives of 13 of our service members?
I don't have any regrets.
You don't have any regrets. Secretary Austin, it's very telling. Secretary Austin, has there ever been any accountability for anyone within the Department of Defense for the deadly, botched, and embarrassing withdrawal from Afghanistan? Any accountability?
Hey, listen, our troops evacuated 124,000 people off of that airfield.
Has anyone been held accountable?
No.
If a Navy captain grounded a ship, what happens immediately?
Typically, that captain is removed.
That captain is removed. Has anyone been held accountable for what happened in Afghanistan?
To my knowledge, no.
You don't regret
That's
it?
the right answer.
No one's ever been held accountable. Mr. Chairman, this is why this Republican majority must provide the accountability that this administration wants to sweep under the rug with what happened in Afghanistan.
That's right. There needs to be accountability. That's why Ashley Babbitt needs to be revisited. That's why Crossfire Hurricane needs to be revisited. That's why FBI whistleblowers need to be made whole. My buddy Steve Friend, you're about to, if you guys are on Rumble, we're going to send you over to the American Radicals podcast if you want to listen in on there. Garrett O'Boyle, Steve Friend, both of them not made whole. Seraphin family not made whole. We survived. We made it through. I'm grateful that we have the situation we have, but let's see some things fixed. Let's see gun rights fixed. Let's see a bunch of stuff that's going on. Let them talk about signal chats. I couldn't care less. I think it's funny. I got a last little piece here for when woke goes wrong, when you decide to cast the wrong guy and the wrong DEI cast member. So a little funny thing about Harry Potter. Apparently there's going to be a TV show about it. Before we do, we'll say one more time. Rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin is where you see the show live at 0930 Eastern time. That's 8:30 in Texas, America. That is not a battle plan. That is a fact. You can also join us on YouTube. It's at Kyle Seraphin or X at Kyle Seraphin. Find us streaming there live as well if that's where you want to do it. Make sure you guys like the video if you're doing it. Share and subscribe and so on. If you want to be part of the locals, we're doing our call-in show tonight where you guys call in and you set the agenda. Make sure that you are subscribed up if you want to be part of that, and you'll get the phone number. And then lastly, on Spotify, KyleSeraphinShow.com. If you want to watch it after the fact with no pop-up ads and no interruptions, and you want an easy way to do it, that is our favorite way to do so. It's better than iTunes for me. It's better than Spotify and so on because you won't have anything interrupting you, and you get video or audio or both. You can switch around. You can change it up as you go. Here's your palate cleanse of the day. A little funny thought about what happens if you choose a Harry Potter character and you choose the wrong guy. Should we really be making Snape the black guy if you're only going to have one black teacher at Hogwarts?
I don't know if you heard this. There is a black guy who just got casted to play Snape in the new Harry Potter TV show. Did you hear about it?
I heard about it.
I kind of think it's a bad idea, but hear me out. Hear me out. What do we know about Snape and Harry Potter's relationship, and why is this going to go bad?
Oh,
Harry doesn't trust Snape for some reason, and he can't figure out why.
It only works if Harry's black too.
Yeah, it's going to be very awkward, and Harry walks in and sees the one black teacher at Hogwarts and goes, I don't know what it is about him. I just can't trust him, you know? You know what? I bet you he's the guy who stole the Sorcerer's Stone. People are like, why do you think that, Harry? I don't know. I just have this feeling.
Snape killed Dumbledore. Whoa! Harry, what are you talking about? Did you see it?
No, just look at him. Also, he is the teacher of the dark arts. You know,
literally until the last movie, they go, okay. But for 7 movies, it's just Harry going like, I don't trust him.
He's the only guy who could teach the Quidditch players how to dunk. I think he had something to do with killing my parents. Why do you think that, Harry? I think he just associates with some bad characters. Do you have any proof of that?
It's a feeling.
So I think we could all agree this is a bad casting.
That is a bad casting. Don't do that, folks. Don't be woke. Don't do woke casting. Just keep it right. All right, that's it for the day. I hope you guys have a great, fantastic day. Again, if you're watching over here on Rumble, you'll go to the American Radicals if you guys want to see that. Make sure you share. Make sure you're tuning in here, and we'll see you tomorrow for Friendly Friday. I expect Steve Friend will be back. He had to go visit his parents, so we're going to get him on, and we'll see. I had a pretty funny hot take from him earlier today. I'll make sure he saves it for you tomorrow. God bless you. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.